message from like, I don't know, a couple of years ago where Sam, you had AJ on the podcast. And I, as a young recruiter, had heard the podcast and was like, this sounds like a cool guy. And I reached out to AJ and I was like, I heard your podcast. I love what you're doing. And then AJ sent me a cute message back. And this was like years ago. I was like, look
Wait,
at this.
I responded to that?
Yeah. You're like, look at this guy. He's going to be a cool guy down the line. Let's respond to him.
Well, you said it was years ago, so I didn't just use ChatGPT to respond.
That's all of this isn't even you, as we've said. This is the generative visual. This is Mid-Journey plus ChatGPT.
This is Top Line.
This month's sponsor is Closed, the industry leader in win-loss analysis. The only thing worse than missing quota is not knowing why. Win-loss analysis with Closed provides detailed and unbiased feedback directly from your buyers. So when you're looking for answers, you'll have the concrete data-driven solutions you need to make the strategic decisions with confidence. If you're curious about how win-loss analysis can boost your win rate, give Closed a try. We'll do a free buyer interview for one of your deals. Visit freebuyerinterview.com now to claim your free interview. That's freebuyerinterview.com now to claim your free interview. How's everybody doing? AJ, how are you?
Good. I'm good. I have stable internet connection this week.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, no, I know. It's a week-to-week thing. We're good. Yeah, I had a great week so far, and we're hosting customers tomorrow at the Phillies game.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I have about 20 customers. Graham hosted in the Red Sox yesterday, had about 10 HubSpotters that joined him.
Lolly.
Yeah, so we're doing our old summer series baseball tour. Get out to the ball club.
Mr. Zaman?
I am okay. I feel a bit anxious today, to be honest. I have a vacation coming up, and I don't take
Toronto.
No, I'm going to Italy for a couple of weeks. Oh my
God! Oh, I think I remember. This is why you can't come to Nashville.
No, I'm coming to Nashville right now.
You won't be in Toronto.
I won't be in Toronto
on the 24th. Yeah.
But I don't take a lot of time off, so I don't know how to. And basically, we booked this a long time ago. I can't back out of this. So my mom had cancer, and when she had cancer, we were like, if you beat cancer, we're going to Italy. It'll be great. And she's like, done. And so she did her part, and then we booked this. And I obviously didn't know the market would be this grindy at this point when we booked it. But now here we are. And so I have to do it. And I need to work through my feelings of feeling anxious about taking the time off. And so I'm just working through that. Like today, I started feeling anxious about it. So other than that, I'm tip top.
You should do a little. Is this heresy for me to say you should do a little bit of work every day? You should block out, the way that to avoid the anxiety is just 2 hours of an hour to 2 hours of email answering, just staying. And then you can disconnect as opposed to completely checking out for 2 or 3 weeks.
I was thinking about that. I was just writing to process my thoughts. And I was like, if I give it a little bit of time during the vacation, then I'll feel like I'm still dialed in or at least connected to work. And there are things I can do that don't need me to be online the exact same hours as everybody else. We'll be recording the podcast, obviously. So I think that's the way to go. But yeah.
The challenge you'll have is whether you choose night or morning, and knowing you, morning is probably no-go.
Yeah.
So
that is a problem. Well, no.
Well, the night, because it's a problem because he won't be bothered in the morning, meaning the time zone difference.
No, I know. At the night, you're right. Everybody will be up and they'll be bothering him. He'll feel this pressure to be responsive.
When I did this last year with Greece, I was like, so I ended up doing just early morning an hour and then just forgetting that people existed the rest of the day.
That's great. That's the right way to do it. In many ways, I'm really good. I'm in Seattle. We just had our second Road to Nashville event with Jocko from Winning by Design. It was just awesome. And if you're listening to this, we've got it the 17th. So that's Wednesday, right? Isn't the 17th a Wednesday? I'm going to check my calendar. I'm almost positive it is. Let's assume that it is. Yes. It's a Thursday. So next Thursday, if you're listening to us in New York, we're doing a workshop. It's the Road to Nashville workshop. We're going to talk about building a sustainable long-term recurring revenue operating model and aligning the go-to-market organization. It's a 2.5 hour, 3 hour workshop. We get in detail. Everybody talks about specific common challenges. So that was awesome. I love Seattle. I love the city. I don't know why. It just sort of speaks to me. And then at the same time, I'm just feeling a little, so there's something wrong with my like pelvis/leg, and it's in pain after 2 runs over the last 2 days. And then there's my shoulder and my eyesight, and I just feel the onset of old age, and I'm just a little frustrated with my body right now. And I'm, wondering if all the hard partying in my 20s is catching up with me.
I mean, it could also be, I see you in your jacket, your warmer clothing right now. Is it colder there?
It was raining. I was zooming around also because I like cities with scooters, and New York doesn't have any scooters. Obviously, Sag Harbor doesn't have any scooters, but there's Lime here, which Uber owns. And so I just like riding around, but it's a little rainy. So I was like zipping around in my scooter, and I got a little wet, so I'm cold.
Oh,
It's crazy how much of
a little bit of that was a little bit part of it is that the sore aches and pains are the coldness. Yeah. Just bundle up.
I don't know. I think there's something up with my tendons. I think I need to stretch more. And I think I just don't always have time to go to like a doctor and properly diagnose what ails me. I keep assuming like that'll go away. And, sometimes it does. Mostly it doesn't.
I'll give you one of my weird science hacks then. Go for cryotherapy. It really helps with this type of shit. So I try to do it. I do it less often than I used to. When I was in New York, I was doing it every week. And it genuinely helps with these aches and pains, tendon issues, muscle issues, etc.
What is cryotherapy? They freeze me?
Yeah. So basically you go in this tank and it's minus 180 degrees Celsius. So you're in there for 3 minutes and your body thinks it's about to die, basically. And so when you come out of it, it releases all these things to try and like save your life, essentially. And that fixes a bunch of the issues you have. So if you're an athlete, you probably do it every single day after training. But for folks like us, if you go once a week, it's great. And there are places in New York and other places where you can just walk in and do it.
So a really good friend of mine owns a cryotherapy, he owns the entire thing, but there's 108 stores, I think, called
Restore Health and Wellness.
So Steve Welch, I'm going to shout out for my good friend, Steve Welch. Steve Welch is a good mentor and friend of mine. He lives in Austin, Texas, as the CEO of Restore.
That's wild.
Yeah. And I had the chance to invest in Restore very early on.
You're an investor? Shit.
No, I didn't do it. I had the chance. I had SeatGeek and Restore. This was 6-7 years ago to do. And I didn't, they did their seed, but Steve's a really good friend of mine, and I will pass that. He's going to love that we talked about.
When I was in New York, I found it. So I found Restore over there because in Toronto, we have a different place that I go to. And I was looking for a spot where I could, have somebody stretch me and I could get a drip and I could do all these random weird things I like doing. And I found Restore and I got the membership. And then I think I sent like 10 people to them and made them sign up for memberships. My older brother was going every week. Like he was hunched. Like my older brother is 6'2". And when we were standing together, he was shorter than me. And he went and this woman was stretching him. And I swear, like in 2 sessions, this guy was like straight again. It's wild. That place is great.
Their mission is hilarious to me, but amazing. They extend lives. Extending lives,
not quite the same as sales commission planning software.
Okay, good. Like they have. The truth is, they have like the data science behind this all as well. When he first like pitched the idea, I was like,
I'm going next week.
This is such like a after bachelor party thing. Go to get like the drip therapy.
The drip is for that, yeah.
Yeah. But look, hey, here we are. Love it.
Yeah. I love that I'm the advertisement for these random like athletic greens and these guys. That's wild.
Well, it's good. It's helpful. You're actually helping me. And also, by the way, Jen Steele, who was at our workshop this morning. We had a couple non-members. Jen was the former VP of marketing for Reprise, where she was a big sponsor of Pavilion. She left. And I said, hey, we're trying to hit our daily sign-up goal today. Can you sign up? And she just signed up. And that was 10 minutes later. Let's go.
This is the episode of shout-outs. Look at us. We're just...
we start that.
We just pulled everything forward.
All right, let's formally, properly start. Asad, you are the keeper of the dockets. We recognize the gentleman from Toronto, the Pakistani from Toronto.
There we go. So right now, every leader is thinking about productivity and performance. We are all resource constrained, the market's tough. And when that happens, you're forced to try and get more out of what you have. And we haven't had to think like this for quite some time because capital was abundant and growth was, in hindsight, relatively easy, right? It didn't feel easy in that moment, but it was much easier than this shit. And so the move a lot of leaders are making to try and address this productivity gain that they want is asking people to come back into the office, either fully or in some form of a hybrid setup. And yesterday, Zoom announced that they are asking people to come back into the office. And they were the poster child of remote work, right? So they now think that you have to be in the office a little bit.
Wait a second. Hold on.
That is so hilarious.
Isn't it?
It's a little hilarious, so ironic, but I actually think this is kind of funny because I know the head of international at Zoom, and I've gone to his office. They've gone to the Zoom offices like pre-pandemic, and like pre-pandemic, Zoom was known as the webinar software, right? It was a webinar. We used it. I used it in 2015 for webinars, right? And so they were in office, and they had like in San Jose a really legit office.
Great office.
So are they the poster child of the pandemic, or are they just like were thrust into it because of what their software does? Like,
I think any poster child is right time, right place, right? Like Hopin was right time, right place. By the way, Hopin just sold its virtual events business to Ring Central for the type of discount that basically means that business was done and over with. Like it was a fire sale, which is crazy. Like these two poster childs, how things have changed since then. But I think for Zoom, they were at the right time in the right place at the right time, and they benefited greatly during the pandemic. And then they did become the poster child of remote work, and now they've asked people to come back. And at the same time, you've got companies like Google, Meta, and Amazon who've been pushing people to come back into the office and getting a lot of resistance since about June. Managers, the reason for this is that managers feel that employees are less productive when they work from home. There was a survey recently that was published on Wall Street Journal that said that managers feel people are 3.5% less productive at home. On the other side, when you survey the employees, they believe they're 7.4% more productive working from home and are also much happier. They have more time back to invest in family, health, relaxation, etc. So there's this disconnect. Companies are struggling to convince people to come back, and you can see it in office occupancy rates, which are at 50% in the major cities. So they're not winning this fight. And I think it's much harder for a smaller company than a larger company to win that discussion anyway. Employers have other issues. The new entrants into the workforce are less prepared for work. They had to complete the last couple of years of education remotely, and that has a negative impact on hard and soft skill development. There is some data on this. So 40,000 candidates took the fundamentals of engineering exam that professional engineers have to take, and scores fell by 10% during the pandemic. So this means that employers have to do a lot more to equip these junior new entrants for success at a time where they have less time, less money, less resources to invest in these things. So there's a lot of issues around productivity. And so, Sam, do you think productivity is down because we're remote or these companies are remote? Or is it because the market sucks, it impacts performance, which impacts how you feel, which impacts productivity?
Well, first of all, Asad, you're probably the person to actually answer this question factually. At least there's a couple of factors. Here's what I think. The first thing is that I definitely think people are less productive at home. I just think that I don't think people like working that much. And I think the younger generation is much more mission driven and is willing to question, as young people always are. This is a good thing, but they're willing to question central tenets. And one of the tenets is that your life is defined by your work. And I think that was much more true for me when I was coming of age than it is for the young people today who are insistent that their life is not defined by work. The whole quiet quitting thing is, I'm not where I work, and I will do what you ask me to do because that's what you asked me to do, and that's fair. Now, I don't personally agree, but that's because I define a lot more of my meaning and significance from my life around what I do every day, which is work. So I think all of these things are interconnected. I definitely think people are less productive. And I think we have to figure out if that's just the steady state. I was thinking about this because I was thinking how we used to have a daily huddle, and I think someone will correct me, Slevin will correct me. Sam, if you're listening, send me a text. It was either 8:47 or 8:37. I've talked about this before, right? But I was in the office, in the best people, the young people, Joanna Curran, Sam Slevin, Colin Cunningham. There was a culture at Axial, this was 2010 to 2014 when I was there. There was a culture of intensity. There was a culture of these kids were, and I know I found out later, yeah, they were not the people that I mentioned, but they were doing drugs and they were partying and they would stay out late, but they were in there at 7:30, 7:45 every morning. And they were healthy and they were doing group workouts together. And it was the beginning of CrossFit, and they prided themselves on how healthy they lived and how intensely they took this company that was, of some success, but didn't achieve great heights. And I think that's just not how people are these days. And so I think that people are less productive. I just came from this workshop. Everybody's talking about, hey, I want to mandate getting people back into the office, and saying and hearing from SDRs and from BDRs, we will not come. And there's one of the companies, in fact, is going to do, one of the companies, not from today, but one of the companies I've been talking to recently, tried to get the SDRs back into the office. The SDR said, we will not come, and they're all getting fired.
Wow.
And, the question I have, I want to hear what AJ has to say, but I also want to hear it from you, Asa, because you're the recruiter. And the counter argument is you can't get the best candidates if you have to be in the office, you are limited geographically, but also maybe the very, very best people are more productive remotely and have to work from home. So and meanwhile, I just moved out to Sag Harbor, I'm 2 hours from the city, and I'm not going to commute into 2 hours into the city every day. And finally, last point, if I had to bet on two groups of people that had identical traits, of course, this never happens. The world isn't a perfect laboratory. One of whom was working remotely and one of whom was in the office. I would bet on the team in the office 100% of the time. So I think a group of people working together in close physical proximity will generate better output than the same group of people remotely. And I don't know what to do about it because I'm thinking that ship might have sailed. If I told my company to come into the office every day, half of them would quit.
Like if people are revolting against Google and Amazon and Meta, Google, literally the company that does they have a hairdresser on campus. They do your laundry for you. They pick you up and they drop you back. You can take dinner home. Like they have invested so much in that office. And even there's a revolt happening. So if those big companies are struggling, the small ones are having a tough time. AJ, what do you think? Well,
we had in-person customer meetings last week, 5 of them in offices. And we asked that question. We were actually talking to that. And one of them had really interesting data around SDRs, Sam. They have half of their SDRs work in the office and half don't. And last quarter, they measured it. And the ones in the office are 22% more productive.
Boom.
Wow.
We just had this. This is a laboratory. God bless AJ.
Yeah.
So this was
22%. That's
fucking crazy.
If you have a team of 4 people, that is an extra person.
Yeah. I mean, it's SDR and it's like they're kind of, I don't know what they're asked what the outcome on this is like. Well, it sounds like you got your answer. And he didn't want to say which way they were really leaning towards that, but I think it's pretty obvious. Now, the question I have from a follow-up standpoint is like, okay, fine, in office, that ship has sailed. I agree. All 3 of us will definitely agree with exactly what you're saying, Sam. We've all been in the environment, the intensity. You weren't in your seat at 8:30. I'm sending you home mentality. And like that intensity just sort of ratcheted up. But the hybrid aspect of it, like what flexibility are we allowing if we do in office, allowing a day or 2 to work from home? Is that acceptable or not even that? It's all or nothing.
I would say you have to pick the same day. The thing that sounds insane to me is like, we don't really mandate. It's like, well, then what the fuck is the point? Like, we're all supposed to be together. That's the point of being in the office. It's not making people go on a trip somewhere. So my instinct would be you have to be in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Monday and Friday you can work from home.
Yeah. Look, guys, this is really easy. What you do is you just
I love
infiltrate
it.
you just infiltrate all of your team Slack channels, and you just monitor it that way, and then it works out just well. I am joking, but that is talking to a friend the other day. He left a company. It was a PE backed company that rolled up pretty big. New CEO joined, and he's fielding calls because the new CEO has asked IT to BCC him to all of like the group, like marketing at or whatever. And he just showed up in some of the emails, like they were like chatting back and forth. And then he just responded with something like, "Hey, I don't agree with this," or something like that. And it was like, okay, well, that's one way to manage your team. And so, what I think we're also seeing is a generation of leaders that are trying to figure out that are like used to the high intensity in office of like that doesn't exist. You take over a company, you're a new CEO. This is my take on the world. Like we're going to see a new swath of CEOs coming into the world in the next 12 to 18 months. Those new CEOs will either have had experience taking over companies, but have been on the sidelines for the last couple of years, or they're brand new CEOs. I would take the bet on the up and comer new CEOs that have been operating in like this world versus ones that are EIRs or others that are kind of sidelines. That's what I'm going to find fascinating. Let's like pin this conversation.
That's really interesting.
Wait, so say that again, AJ. So you're saying the people that have only been operating remotely, they are going to be better positioned to figure out how to drive productivity in a remote world. I guess that makes sense.
I mean, I don't think there's going to be like, there will be two types of CEOs. There'll be first-time CEOs that are like come up, risen through the ranks, and there'll be CEOs that are taking over companies, but probably were independent board members or just had been not operating in this role for the last couple of years. They were on the sidelines. We all know executives or other folks that like last year, like, all right, fuck it, this is enough. I'm burnt out. I'm out. Like those people are going to come back into the working world. I think a lot of them come back as CEOs in some, and I'm just going to be fascinated to see how this plays out. Let's see how this works.
I think that's a really interesting point. I think productivity is an issue for sure. But I've been thinking about this a lot. So I spent some time talking to people that went through previous recessions. And I was like, how was productivity then? And at the worst part of that down cycle, productivity was down, even though they were in office. I do think that productivity being down right now is not because we're remote. It could help to be in an office. One could argue that it might help if we're in offices. But I think the decline that we've seen from last year to this year is primarily because people are winning less. They feel defeated. They feel tired. AJ, your story about the Alps, it keeps rotating in my head because that's what this feels like, right? Like we've been fighting for so long and now we are in the last phase of it, but it's going to be 9 months, right? 6 to 9 months of more fighting. And it just everybody feels tired and they have to find this energy to fight more. And I think when you feel defeated, when you feel tired, your productivity does go down. I also think that if I think back to times when we were in offices, there were also a lot of negatives and distractions from being in office that I don't, as a leader, have to wrestle with as much right now. And I'm happy not to have those distractions. Like when you're in offices, there's a lot more politics. There are a lot more groups that get created. People go out drinking on a Friday, something happens, you've got to deal with these things. Like those issues were also quite prominent when we were all in offices and are not part of the equation right now. And I kind of like not having the distraction, especially in this moment in time. I think one way to address productivity is to force people back into the office, but it has ramifications. You're going to lose some people, and some of those people might be your best people. I also think that there might be other ways to address productivity that we're not looking at because everybody's thinking this is the move to make. And I think that is a flawed way of thinking about it. The last point I'll make is that almost every generation says the new generation is lazy and entitled and this and that and the other. We've heard it all throughout. I was listening to the 20 VC podcast this morning with Jason Lemkin on it, and he was saying this as well. Like he's changed his mind about remote. He thinks people need to be in the office. This new generation has only been used to winning. They are entitled, they're lazy, et cetera, et cetera. I look at some of the youngsters in my company. I was on a call at 11 p.m. last week with somebody who then had to go and have 2 more conversations till 1 a.m. because the client was in Singapore. This is a youngster. It's his first job. Like, he did not and about it. Like, he was dialed in. And I feel like at a macro level, yes, it is a little bit academic at that level. But I think as individuals, you should be able to build at the sizes that we're talking about, teams that you have selected the people that don't have those flaws. In every generation, they're the hard workers, they're the non-hard workers. If you focus on, go hire an immigrant, a second generation immigrant who played soccer. Usually those people are the hardest working people. They have to prove to the world that the sacrifice of their parents is not worth nothing. And so they need to achieve success because of that. They played team sports, so they understand the value of teamwork. They understand how to work hard. They understand that hard work leads to success. Like, all those things are ingrained in them. Put a bunch of those people in your team, and I think the results are different. So I think people should get better at hiring, because if you're building a 100-person company and you're dealing with this issue, you could have dealt with it less if you were better at hiring, is my opinion.
You shared, I think it was you. Somebody shared. No, it was Kathleen, who listens to this. Kathleen Booth, SVP of Marketing and Member Experience at Pavilion. She shared this article that Esther, what's her last name, that was VP of Product at Twitter, X, wrote about. And I guess my point is, and something has happened to our ability to confidently talk about work that is squelching open debate and is moving culture in a way where it's becoming harder and harder to just state that you disagree with the orthodoxy. And the orthodoxy is there needs to be set boundaries. You are not allowed to text people or call people after hours. If you are slacking them on the weekend, you have to apologize for it, or you should feel ashamed or sheepish. And I think, I do have a point of view. I have a point of view that building companies is really hard, and that if you're going to be fully remote, that's an incredible benefit. And we don't monitor you every day. And as a consequence, it's totally okay. If it's more than okay, there's an expectation that you should be available a little bit in odd times, like on the weekend, if you're going to get the benefit of working from home and getting the benefit of not having to punch in and punch out or do any kind of FaceTime. Now, I think it's perfectly okay if people disagree with me. If there's people that want to build companies that say, we will never Slack you, or I have to send those fucking, God, just like those ponderous, explanation, where it's like, my time is not your time. So if I Slack you on the weekend, please, feel free to ignore it until Monday at 11 a.m. I think it's okay to say our culture is going to be one where we expect you to work on the weekends. We expect you to put in extra effort. It's okay if you don't want to be that person here, if we're not that company for you. But this is the company that we want to be, and that is why, for all of his many, many flaws, and he seems like a total douchebag, but Elon, I have a lot of respect for that part of it. Yeah. He's made a lot of mistakes, a lot of stuff where, we don't need to promote his tweets above other people's tweets. But fundamentally, the reality is that all of these, surplus elites, to use a phrase from the All In podcast, we're talking about RIP Twitter and how it's going to crash and how it's going to go out of business. Yeah. And it's not going to crash, and doesn't seem like it's going to go out of business. And one of the big reasons it's going to go out of business is because they might have declining usage and revenue, but they also have 1/3 of the employees that they had. And I think I feel stymied. I feel like I'm not able to say, can I put it into our values that I can Slack you on the weekend? You better fucking respond at least within 12 hours. You don't have to respond right away if you're in the middle of the day, but I would like a response. You can expect a response from me if it's urgent. I don't know. I guess my point is there was a CEO, very famous CEO at our workshop this morning, just now. And he said, I'm thinking about leaving Seattle. I said, well, don't come to New York because there's no shortage of entitlement anywhere in the world. He said, what are you talking about? I thought it was just people young, this generation in Seattle. No, it's not just Seattle. It's all over the world. People don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that you're going to message them after hours. They don't want to hear about, work-life integration versus work-life balance. They don't want to hear about I don't even know how to say to somebody, are you working hard? Can you work harder? You're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say that. In fact, most people will give you an intellectual answer about, Sam, it's really about outputs. Why are you measuring inputs? It's really about like, why are you asking that? You shouldn't even don't worry about whether people are working hard or not working hard. Just worry about what they produce. And anyway, it's all very confused and conflated, and it feels religious. That's why I said orthodoxy. It feels like you're not allowed to challenge any of these beliefs, or that makes you a bad person. Today's business landscape is full of uncertainty, and succeeding as a go-to-market leader has never been more challenging. Pavilion is here to provide you with the education, support, and resources you need to grow, learn, and unlock your full potential. Join more than 10,000 of the world's leading go-to-market executives in a private membership community designed specifically to fuel your success. Visit joinpavilion.com and use the code TOPLINE20 to get 20% off your membership. That's joinpavilion.com, and the code is TOPLINE20 to get 20% off your Pavilion membership. And now, back to the show.
Because people have forgotten that the thing that makes the West amazing is free speech, is the idea of discourse, is the understanding that two people might have differing points of views. One might be right, the other might be wrong. We both feel strongly about it, but we don't talk it out, and we don't talk it out in a way that isn't militant. Our stance is not going to be militant, at least. And I think people feel that theoretically that's good and they value it. And then when it comes to something that they feel strongly about, they actually don't want that discourse, and they don't want you to say some of the things you're saying. But at the same time, Sam, there are examples of companies that are performance-driven organizations that are thriving, that have been able to hire great people that are doing really well. Like Snowflake is a really good example of that. Like Snowflake has never said we are a family. He literally, I was listening to him yesterday. He said,
this is Slootman.
Franz Lutman, he's like, I have to tolerate my family. I cannot fire members of my family. I don't have to tolerate anyone that I work with. This is a performance-driven organization, and they have when you think about the processes they've implemented to keep it performance-driven, it's quite intense. It's one of the top places that people want to work. Young people, older people, they want to work there. And I think there are a lot more people that might be entitled and lazy and all those things, but there's still a significant amount of hustlers who want to work hard, who want to be part of a organization that is performance driven, and are looking for those things as well. So if an organization wants to build that team, then they probably have to look at what Snowflake did to be able to achieve it. Because you have to invest in a number of areas to be able to be that type of an organization. You can't just say it. You have to implement certain things to do it. But there are examples like them.
I just look, guys. I just put the send later in Slack, and you just send all the Slacks at 3 a.m. at 2:55. Oh, AJ, really works. I go the opposite way of it. No, I hear that, and I think there's a part of this. Sam is from a CEO, and Austin as a CEO, as for productivity of people, yes, but also how involved are we as CEOs, and delegation and letting our teams do things versus feeling like we're coming in heavy-handed. So that's where I actually think about this, and more of the feedback I've gotten over the years of AJ, you pick up the ticket with the customer at 9:30 at night. I don't want a customer falling off at 9:30 at night. And of course, I'm leading by example doing that, but then I've gotten feedback well, are we not doing something correctly? Is there something wrong that we're not doing? Yeah, pick up the fucking ticket. There is actually something wrong with that. That's so I do go back and forth on this as well.
It takes courage.
It takes courage.
It's tough it's very tough. Well, not only does it take courage, it takes sustainability. You have to stand up to it, it's a bombardment every single time. Yeah. So it's at some point, it's it does absolutely take that ability to say no, I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna let my standards go down just because I'm hearing a lot of naysayers to do it. It's tough. It's really tough.
It's probably a way to think about this is that there's always a tug of war going on between employer and employees. And the most important element in who's winning that tug of war is the interest rate. When the interest rate is low, then employees gain a lot more leverage. And we saw that when the market was frothy, and then they ask and they pull in their direction. And you're now noticing that as interest rates have become higher, the economy has become a little bit choppier, job security has gone down. Now employers are gaining some of that leverage back, and they're trying to use it. Doesn't mean that they are having an easy time. There's still a fight back from the employee side. But I think over the next year or so, there should be more examples of companies that are able to implement the true culture that they want. I think over time, in the next year or so, you'll see a lot more people develop the courage to be like, no, this isn't a family. This is a performance-driven organization. You're here if you want to be part of this team that wants to be the best in the world at what we do. I also, as we're talking through this, I'm realizing that some of my personal experiences might be creating a bit of a bias, because I run an organization that, we've not seen a decline in productivity as the market has gone down because we're remote. Doesn't mean we're performing the same amount, but I don't think productivity per person is down. The outcome is lower, but they're giving it their best. I also think that we're the type of organization that works externally a lot more than internally. I think if you're a Series A organization and you're developing a product, there's probably a lot of reasons to say that the product team being together, the engineering team being together is going to be super beneficial. There are a lot of reasons to say that for SDRs, being in office early on will help them benefit from learning by osmosis. That'll make their ramp a lot better. And it just starts to make your first 100 phone calls with your partner sitting there, or your roommate who's a financial analyst sitting over there listening to you and thinking you suck, and you getting all conscious about that. So I do think that I might be a bit biased in this way. I just think that if there was a choice between pulling people back into the office versus addressing the actual culture of the business and turning it into a performance-driven organization where you're not afraid to say we're that, I would say that's the better direction than forcing people into the office. But who knows? We still have to see how this plays out.
I think, and I think there's going to be a lot of text messages, especially from your bleeding heart brother, AJ, telling us why we represent corporate interests.
Yeah. Well, do you know who's wishing that we would go back into the office? WeWork. They're struggling.
And elegant transition.
Look at
Elegant transition alert.
I am. So tell me what WeWork going out of business means. First off, Asad, thank you for sending the Wall Street Journal. I don't have a subscription, so I read the Israel Times version of this article.
My brother. I didn't know you were a fellow Jew.
Yeah. Well, Google sure puts it up at the very top. So
sure.
The first one that pops
up. It's because we control the media.
Conspiracy. Now I've said it, I'll get into trouble.
No, Sam. All right, Sam. Anyway, moving on from that.
I'm going to get you.
I think,
I'm going to get you.
Wasn't WeWork supposed to go out of business 5 years ago, during the pandemic? How are they staying?
They just didn't go public. I think it's a great product, and that would make me really sad. I hope they can make it. Asad, is it fundamentally that just revenue is lower than expenses and they just cannot make the business model work?
Your top line has to be bigger than your middle line. Bottom line to make sense, as Sam says. It's basically that. I think they are stuck in a really hard spot where office occupancy is down, meaning that if you want to go get a new office, the rates to get your own office are pretty good, right? AJ was telling a story a little while ago about the office they got in Austin. They got a completely retrofitted gangster office for a really affordable rate. And they got an office the size that will facilitate their team for the next couple of years. So WeWork wasn't in consideration at that point. So I think they're struggling because they have a heavy debt load. People are not using offices the same way. And the fact that they're not using offices the same way make it so that anyone who is considering an office has another viable option. And so they're in a tricky spot. So WeWork has announced that they might go down. And then in the last week, we heard about Hopin. Hopin sold their core business for pennies on the dollar. And you've heard of a number of other shutdowns as well. So there's a lot of that. We've been hearing that there will be, during this last phase, a lot of shutdowns, and you're starting to see that news pop up. But then there's also positives on the other side of the spectrum. So Tata released some data, and it seems like venture funding bottomed out in the first part of this year, because in Q2 there were marked improvements in a number of areas. Total funding up 26%. Down rounds were only 20% of total rounds, meaning 80% of total rounds were up rounds. Series B deals increased 19% quarter over quarter, while Series C deal count climbed 12%. And if you look at the total cash raised by Series Bs, that was up 42%. Cloud companies release their earnings reports, and they're bellwether for the economy because that's usage, right? So it shows you how people are actually behaving in their businesses today. And the three providers saw between a 3x and 4x increase in net new revenue in Q2 compared to Q1. So it seems very confusing. Like, AJ, do you think this phase of the market is basically a combination of shitty news and good news at the same time every week?
I think so. I think that it isn't good news. That's our podcast in a nutshell. Actually, yeah. Yes. I think that Bill Gurley had a really interesting tweet around this, and I'm just gonna pull this off the top of my head, and I didn't share it with you guys, but I thought it was fascinating, and talked about this idea of dry powder that's on the sideline for all these growth equity companies. Or did you?
It was one of the 700 things I sent you guys.
Yeah, you sent so much. That was actually a really fascinating tweet. Yes, it was you. Thank you, Austin. I got to give credit where credit's due. Where he talked about that's not how it works. That's not how it works in these funds, and that's true. You have capital calls. You have limited partners, LPs, and you say like, hey, I'm raising a $100 million fund and I get $100 million of commitments, but it doesn't mean that those LPs wire you $100 million. And in fact, if anything, they're okay. They're cool to keep their money. Now they're on the hook if you make a capital call and they, like, let's say do $1 million into this $100 million fund. That might be like upfront, I'm doing 10%. Here's 100,000. And then over a period of time, and I'm an LP in multiple funds. So I see what this capital call has gone, and I can tell you it has slowed down. And I'm like, we're totally
way down.
Way down. You're totally cool with that. You don't care.
Oh, I love it. Like, no more capital calls.
But that's exactly right. So that's the investor sentiment that exists right now in the market. The funds know this.
Yeah.
They're in no hurry to do anything. So this like idea that, and Austin talked about it the first month that we started this, of like, hey, like things are going to like loosen up. We're going to see the market.
Do you get management fees on commitments or capital deployed?
I actually don't know the answer to that.
I think it's on commits.
Really?
Well, that's a great business model.
What a great business model. What the hell are we doing?
Fantastic.
We're starting all in. Like, this is actually the side we need to be on. What a great business model. But yeah, so you have all of this capital sitting on the sidelines when it's not. And I think that we're going to carry forward. And so like that, you're getting squeezed at the growth equity and you're getting squeezed at the bottom. And so like in the middle of these companies that are like, okay, I can, 12 to 24 months, that's where you're going to start to see raises. I think that will happen in more, I'd say April of next year is my gut. We'll see what happens.
My financial model tells me Pavilion is going to be jamming in April of next year.
Awesome.
I love that. Is that the one with 500 KPIs, or is that a different?
It's an integrated customer lifecycle journey model that has all the key inputs. What do you think, Austin?
I think that this is just very interesting to see play out. And I do think that this phase of the market is going to be a combination of positive news and negative news at the same time. So in a way, we do need to see some of this stuff happen. Like, companies like Hopin have to sell off their assets. Other Series D, E type companies fall apart. Like, it's just part of the cycle and has to happen. But I feel like we are coming out of this period with hopefully some lessons learned, but they haven't been learned just as yet. Again, the Jason Lemkin podcast this morning was really interesting. He was talking to a seed round founder who was a second-time founder. And this guy was trying to raise his seed round. And he was talking to Jason. Jason's like, and he's like, I'm getting rejected by all these VCs. And Jason's like, okay, try this, try this. Eventually, he's like, why don't you just go to like a bunch of rich tech executives who had outcomes and raise 3 million from, 30 different people? And he's like, oh, I already have that. And so Jason's like, then what the fuck are you doing? Like, sign the paper, close the deal, move on, right? And so I think there is a lot of disconnect between expectations and what the reality of the market is. And something has to happen for those lessons to be learned. Because right now there is a disconnect at the seed round level and at the Series A level. It seems like everybody gets it theoretically, but they feel they're the exception that should be valued the way companies were being valued before. And when everyone feels that way, you've got a really tricky market. So I think that has to clear out.
We were in our workshop this morning. Jocko was talking about, again, Road to Nashville. You're listening, you're in New York City. Come this Thursday. It really is going to be awesome. But here's something. I have a couple of thoughts. One of them is he has this chart where he plots out, and probably something that Asad has looked at before as well. What percent of sales and marketing relative to growth, and what percent of sales and marketing as a percent of new revenue. Right. So and there's a lot of public companies that are spending 50, 60% of new revenue on sales and marketing, meaning new business. And so one thing that is in my mind, here's the bad news, is that I continue to wonder, I've got a LinkedIn post in my head brewing about this, or a series of them, is the fundamental assumptions about SaaS bullshit. So here's the fundamental premise. There's, I think, three things, right? But the fundamental point of SaaS is that you spend a lot of money. The reason that you burn capital, you spend a lot of money at first. Effectively, you call it customer acquisition cost, but if you want to go to a higher level, you spend a lot of money to change somebody's mind, right? And the theory is it's hard to change somebody's mind. It's expensive to change somebody's mind, but it's not expensive to keep them status quo where they are. And most people would prefer to be status quo. So you'll spend a lot of money on customer acquisition cost, and then you will have them as customers. And once you acquire them, it's cheap to keep them as customers. And that's because people don't like to change fundamentally, right? Fundamentally. And so the reason that you burn capital is because we're in growth mode. But if we were ever there's a series of out years in the hazy future where we are spending less to acquire customers because we have plenty of customers, and the ongoing operating performance of the business is super, super high margin, right? So it's 80% gross margin, 30%, 40% operating margins. These things spit off tons of cash. And what do we see in the public markets, the companies that are actually public, that are recurring revenue businesses? It never happens. It never, ever happens. They never actually get to the out years. And why do they never, ever get to the out years? They never, ever get to the out years because they never feel like they can take their foot off the pedal when it comes to sales and marketing investment, because there's always competitors nipping at their heels. They also never get to the out years because it turns out that it's not super cheap to keep somebody around, because you have to keep investing in new products and features. So even if you're not spending on sales and marketing, you're continuing to hire more engineers or more people to build the software or add bells and whistles and features. And the fundamental point of it, which I think is endemic to the world that we live in, is actually people change their minds a lot. Actually, people in this modern world are very, very inclined to change their minds. And they're very inclined to say, you know what? I don't need that piece of software. I'm going to try something else. I'm going to try going without it for a little while. So what does that mean? That means that all of the multiples around everything, including 10 times, because I always remember Rob Cohen saying, who's an advisor to Pavilion, saying, nothing is worth 10 times revenue. Not a single thing is worth 10 times revenue, right? There's nothing that's worth 10 times ARR. And I'm not even sure. Everything should be measured on EBITDA. And then it's, a multiple of EBITDA. And so one part of me, to the point of disconnect between reality, is that nobody actually knows in a regular world, when capital has a regular price to it, are these businesses, are our businesses, my business, is it worth anything close to what I've thought it might be worth? That's the bad news. The good news is that the things that do drive long-term, because I think sometimes we're so susceptible to interest rates right now. We are so I don't think it's interest rates that drive value. It's the market that drives value, of which interest rates, the cost of money, certainly plays a role. But meanwhile, we've got generative AI. I think someone will know whether LK99 is a hoax. and whether room temperature semiconductors are actually possible. But the point is, advances in science and technology, ongoing advancements, of which there are going to be many, many, many. There, over the next 20 to 30 years, we will cure cancer. We will extend human longevity by a factor of probably 50% for average healthy people in Western worlds. Generative AI will make the individual person, once we fully find out how to make it work and practical, 30% more productive. Those are things that drive valuation. Those are things that are investable moments.
Hold on. 30% more productive if they're working from home or working from an office?
It'll mean that working from home will now be as productive as it was when you're working in an office without generative AI, but nevertheless. So I think there's a lot of reasons, and I think people are beginning to realize and get excited about technological advancements, coupled with declining interest rates that do mean, I mean, again, I could be wrong, but I am optimistic that money will start flowing again, and that next year is going to look a lot better than this year. And that's why I'm optimistic. But I do fundamentally worry that the entire thesis of SaaS is not true.
That's so fascinating, given that the theory has been at work for about 20 years right now.
Yeah.
And I find that so interesting. Everything you said is true, especially the like people change their minds, given the working environment where just Austin had a lot of stats around the job hopping, people changing jobs all the time. It's not even just changing mind. It's just you have a brand new mindset coming into the organization. So I like everything you said was just pretty spot on. The X factor here, Sam and Austin, for the US anyways, next year's an election year. So we got it.
Right. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for money coming back.
I said this a while back in one of our episodes that he won't let the economy be total shit in an election year. Like you have control a bit.
I think that it's just the X factor of in a good way for sure. It's going to put people's mind. The most interesting thing you said in there, Sam, which we should dive into at some point, is that we're going to cure cancer in 20 years. I found that statement absolutely.
I like the 50% longer lives. I'm down for that.
Yeah, well, you know my hottest take ever?
Tell us.
Hottest take ever is overpopulation is not the problem. Underpopulation is the problem. Yeah. Babies will be grown in labs. You will be able to order babies as a service.
That is as a service. You didn't like you can cancel. This one's lame. Take this one back.
Are those babies going to be 30% more productive though?
100%.
98%.
98%.
I think just
go ahead.
To your point, Sam, one very quick thing is that there are still examples of category leaders that do what the whole SaaS journey is supposed to be, and then they become money printing machines. And that's what I think the disconnect is. There are some that can become sales forces, but those are few and far between. And we have thousands of companies thinking there'll be thousands of companies that can achieve that. And that's probably a fallacy.
As John Maynard Keynes says, in the long run, we're all dead. Time for shout outs and wins of the week.
Yes.
I've got a great one, but AJ, you go first.
I'll give a shout out to Tom McCarthy. We all know Tom, and Tom is Pavilion
CEO of Officeworks Software.
Yes. Tom and I had a great conversation catching up this week on, we were both part of the Pavilion Alpha group. And a couple of weeks ago, we were chatting and having like a side conversation. We're like, we need to continue this. And we did. And Tom was really helpful working through some challenges I was thinking about. So shout out to Tom this week.
Shout out to Tom. I'll go next. I don't know if this is a shout out, but I listened to Mark Roberge's new podcast. And in that, he said something that I was just unaware of, which is that in a couple of years into HubSpot's journey, he was unable to see around the corners 2 or 3 years down the line, which as a CRO, you have to be able to do, especially as you become a scale up. And he got a mentor, and that mentor was John McMahon. Then I read an article last night. Brian Halligan had like the path to a CEO type of article. I think he's doing a series. And in that, he said he worked for John McMahon at PDC. And he was a VP on his team. I was like, I don't think our new generation understands how cool John McMahon is and how special PTC was, the things that they achieved, the fact that they created Medic there. I think PTC still has the record for the most consecutive quarters where they beat expectations in the public markets. They still hold on to it. And they did that because they came up with a methodology that allowed them to predict and forecast in a very consistent manner. And everybody that came out of that company, a lot of those leaders went on to become leaders of some of the best companies out there, from MongoDB to Zscaler to even Snowflake. And so I think it's just really cool. They talk about the PayPal mafia. I think the PTC mafia is super cool. And for those who don't know who they are and who John McMahon is, something to look into. Big part of our history.
Big part of our history. I've got, I'm going to give a shout out to Jocko Vanderkoy, great running partner this morning, says hi to everybody that walks by us, got a woman in the middle of a run to take pictures of us while we were running. I want to give a shout out. I've mentioned him a few times now because he's one of my guys' weekend friends, but he became the first lifetime member of Pavilion. So I created a special, very exclusive, neither of you are part of it, very exclusive membership category called Lifetime Members. Matt Fenwick was the very first lifetime member. He signed up today for a lifetime membership. If you're interested, let me know. But it was just super, super cool. He's the CEO of Harmonix Consulting. He's about to, he might be doing something new in the climate space, which we're really excited about. And also just everybody, including both of you, we're running our I Love Pavilion, I Heart Pavilion campaign. AJ and Asad, both of you participated, and that's awesome.
You were super proactive about it. We didn't need any like reminders or anything.
Well, I'm tired of sending out these ambassador emails. So for the listeners, we've got this group of ambassadors. They're all shareholders. I've paid them in ownership of the company that I started. And I send out an email saying, all you got to do is post this one fucking thing, and crickets. So I'm done with that. I'm going to start texting them. I'm going to blow you up. Or anyway, I will do it for you, AJ, because I'm an ambassador for Quota Path too. But anyway.
Why am I not a Quota Path ambassador then?
You guys have your own, like, first off, you have your own.
He's secret. Is he going to talk about the secret? This really got to him. He is
doing every week about this. Like, what did they talk about that I didn't hear about?
Oh my! So we can't text just individual. AJ has to be on. We're also not allowed to talk to each other without AJ being
By the way, I love the Jocko thing. Like, I can imagine him just running and saying hi to every person and every animal that passes him.
He has bad vision. So he's like, I can't really see them. I just see like a body coming towards me, and I just feel like it's better to say hi.
That's amazing. That's a very Jocko thing.
What a great episode, everybody. AJ, who are we? Tell us.
We are collectively Topline and are co-hosted by Sam Jacobs, CEO of Pavilion, Asad Zaman, CEO of STA, and yours truly, AJ Bruno, CEO of Quota Path.
And folks,
everyone,
let me give us 5 stars on iTunes. And I'm gonna make something up. Post on LinkedIn, tag me, AJ and Asad. Write your favorite or your most controversial or something you disagree with. Comment, but specifically about the content that we talked about today. The person that has the most engagement on their post, I will make a $500 donation to a charity of your choice.
Wow.
Just tag us, #Topline, #Topline. Just, we want to know, are you
I'm going to match that. I'm matching that, Sam.
I'll match it too.
Mrs. Bruno, if you're out there, Mrs. Zaman, if you're out there, AJ's liberal brother running for the 15th congressional district of the House seat of Pennsylvania. If you're out there,
yes.
If you disagree strongly, let us know. All right, everybody, we'll talk to you next week. Have a great one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
This episode was brought to you by Closed, which helps organizations improve their sales win rates, build better products, and consistently uncover the real reasons they win and lose business. Visit freebuyerinterview.com to learn more. Closed, freebuyerinterview.com to learn more. Win-loss analysis is incredibly important. So thank you for listening, and thanks to Closed for sponsoring the show.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Topline. To learn more about the trends, news, and developments impacting the world of B2B SaaS, head to joinpavilion.com, where more than 10,000 of the world's top go-to market leaders go to achieve and unlock their full professional potential.